They told everyone I was a college dropout loser, while my brother was the successful doctor. But years later, I built a thriving business, and now my brother is drowning in debt while they're all begging me to help him. Hey Reddit, I need to get this off my chest because the past few months have been absolutely insane. I'm 32 female, and I have an older brother, Jake, who's 35. Growing up, our family dynamics were completely messed up, and it's all coming back to bite them in the ass now. Let me paint you a picture of my childhood. Jake was always the golden boy. Perfect grades, perfect behavior, perfect everything. He was valedictorian in high school, got into Harvard PM Ed, and basically walked on water according to my parents. Me, I was the family disappointment from day one. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't a bad kid. I got decent grades, played guitar in a band, and was really into computers and technology. But compared to Jake's academic achievements, I might as well have been selling drugs on street corners. According to my parents, every dinner conversation went something like this. Mom, Jake got another A+ on his organic chemistry exam. The professor said he's never seen such natural talent. Dad, that's my boy. What about you, Ava? How did that history test go? Me, I got a B+. Dad, B+? Why not an A? Your brother would have gotten an A. This happened constantly. Jake got a scholarship to Harvard. They threw a party and invited the whole neighborhood. I made the honor roll. That's nice, honey. Can you help me with the dishes? The worst part was that Jake ate it up. He developed this superiority complex where he genuinely believed he was better than me. He'd make comments like, well, not everyone can be intellectually gifted, or some people are just meant for different paths in life. The condescending tone made my blood boil. When it came time for college, I applied to several good schools and got into a decent state university for computer science. I was actually excited about it. I'd been coding since I was 12 and had this vision of maybe starting a tech company someday. But college didn't go as planned. My freshman year was rough. I was dealing with undiagnosed anxiety and depression, probably stemming from years of being told I wasn't good enough. My grades suffered. I started skipping classes. By the end of sophomore year, I was on academic probation. Meanwhile, Jake was absolutely crushing it at Harvard. Dean's List every semester, research positions, the works. Every family gathering became a Jake appreciation festival. The breaking point came during my junior year. I was struggling with my mental health, barely keeping up with coursework, and feeling completely lost. I made the decision to take a semester off to get my head together and figure out what I really wanted to do. When I told my parents, you'd think I'd announced I was joining a cult. Dad, you're dropping out? Are you out of your mind? Mom, what are we going to tell people? Your brother is about to graduate Harvard with honors, and you're what? Giving up. Me, it's not giving up. It's taking time to figure things out. I'm not handling the pressure well right now. Dad, pressure? You don't know what pressure is. Jake manages to handle Harvard just fine. That conversation broke something in me. They weren't concerned about my mental health or well-being. They were worried about what the neighbors would think. I ended up taking that semester off, which turned into a year, which eventually became permanent. I never went back to finish my degree. Instead, I got a job at a local computer repair shop to pay rent and started teaching myself web development in my spare time. This is where things get really ugly. Instead of being supportive or even just keeping quiet about my situation, my parents decided to wage a public campaign about what a disappointment I was. At family gatherings, Jacob's accomplishments were announced like he just won the Nobel Prize, while I was either ignored completely or mentioned with phrases like, well, Ava's figuring things out, with this pained expression. But it got worse. My parents started actively telling people I was a college dropout who was wasting her potential. I found out from my cousin that at her wedding, my aunt asked about me, and my mom literally said, "Oh, Ava, she dropped out of college. We don't know what happened to her. Some kids just can't handle the pressure like Jake can." Jake graduated Harvard Medical School and got into a prestigious residency program. The family threw him a massive party. They invited probably 200 people. There were speeches about how proud they were, how Jake was going to save lives, how he was everything they could hope for in a son. I wasn't even invited to speak at the party. I was basically treated like hired help, clearing plates and staying in the background while everyone celebrated the successful child. The narrative they created was crystal clear. Jake was the doctor who was going to make something of himself, and I was the dropout loser who couldn't even finish college. For a couple years after that, I was pretty much rock bottom emotionally. I was working at the computer repair shop making $12 an hour, living in a crappy studio apartment, and genuinely starting to believe maybe my family was right about me being a failure. The computer repair shop was owned by this old guy named Frank, who was actually really cool. He noticed I had skills beyond just fixing hardware and started letting me handle their basic web development projects. Local businesses needed websites, and I was good at it. One day, Frank pulled me aside and said something that changed everything. "Ava, you're too talented to be working for someone else. You should start your own business." The idea terrified me, but I'd hit such a low point that I figured I had nothing left to lose. I used my savings, all $3,000 of it, to buy a better computer and started freelancing web development on the side. My first client was a local restaurant that needed a website. I charged them $500 and spent probably 80 hours on it because I wanted it to be perfect. They loved it and recommended me to their friends. Slowly, very slowly, I started building a client base. Small businesses, local nonprofits, a few larger companies. I was working 16-hour days between the repair shop and my freelance work. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was actually good at something. After about a year of freelancing, I had enough clients that I could quit the repair shop and do web development full-time. Frank was sad to see me go, but proud that I was taking the leap. The first few months of full-time freelancing were scary as hell. Some months I barely made rent, but I was learning, growing, and most importantly, I was passionate about what I was doing in a way I never was about college coursework. I started expanding beyond just websites. I learned about digital marketing, SEO, social media management, basically anything small businesses needed to succeed online. I wasn't just building websites anymore, I was helping businesses grow. My first big break came when I landed a contract with a regional restaurant chain. They needed a complete overhaul of their online presence, new website, social media strategy, online ordering system, the works. It was a $15,000 project, more money than I'd ever made on a single job. I knocked it out of the park. Their online orders increased by 300% in the first 3 months after launch. They were so happy they recommended me to other restaurant groups, and suddenly I had more work than I could handle. That's when I decided to officially start a company, Digital Solutions. Not the most creative name, but it worked. I registered as an LLC, got a business license, rented a small office space, and started thinking bigger. Within 2 years, Digital Solutions went from just me working out of my apartment to a team of 8 employees. We weren't just doing websites anymore. We were providing complete digital transformation services for small and medium businesses. The key was that I actually understood what these businesses needed. I wasn't some big corporate consulting firm that charged $300 an hour to give generic advice. I was a woman who'd worked in the trenches, who understood what it was like to struggle, and who genuinely wanted to help other people succeed. We developed this reputation for being the company that could take a struggling local business and help them compete online against the big corporations. Word spread fast in the business community. By year 3, we were doing over $2 million in annual revenue. I hired a business manager, a sales team, and specialized developers for different platforms. We moved to a bigger office downtown. The crazy part is my family had no idea any of this was happening. I'd gone low contact with them years earlier because every interaction was just them comparing me unfavorably to Jake or expressing disappointment about my life choices. I moved across town, changed my phone number, and basically disappeared from their radar. As far as they knew, I was still the college dropout working at a computer repair shop. They never asked, so I never told them. While I was building my business, Jake was having his own journey through the medical world. He finished his residency and got a position at a prestigious hospital. From the outside, everything looked perfect, but I started hearing things through the family grapevine. Apparently, being a doctor wasn't quite the goldmine everyone thought it would be. Jake had massive student loans, over $300,000 from undergrad and medical school. His residency barely paid anything, and even as an attending physician, the loan payments were crushing him. More problematically, Jake had developed some expensive tastes during his time as the family golden boy. He bought a house he couldn't really afford, a BMW, expensive clothes, frequent vacations. He was living like he was making big money before he actually was. He also got married to another doctor, Sarah, who had her own set of loans and expensive preferences. They had a wedding that cost more than most people's annual salary. I heard from my cousin that Jake was actually struggling financially despite having this prestigious job everyone was so impressed by. Turns out lots of doctors are house poor and dealing with debt well into their 30s and 40s. But my parents still talked about him like he was Warren Buffett. Jake's doing so well at the hospital. Jake and Sarah bought such a beautiful house. They had no idea he was financing this lifestyle with credit cards and home equity loans. Then COVID hit and everything changed. For Jake's hospital, it meant budget cuts, reduced elective procedures, and actual pay cuts for the physicians. Jake went from making $200,000 to making $150,000, basically overnight, while all his expenses stayed the same. For my business, it was initially terrifying, but ultimately transformative. Suddenly, every business in the world needed to figure out how to create and operate online. Restaurants needed delivery platforms. Retail stores needed e-commerce sites. Service businesses needed virtual consultation tools. We were uniquely positioned to help with all of this. While other businesses were struggling, we were hiring more staff to keep up with demand. 2020 ended up being our best year ever. We did $4.5 million in revenue. I bought a house, not some massive McMansion, but a nice place in a good neighborhood that I could actually afford. I drove a reliable Toyota, saved money, and reinvested profits back into the business. The universe has a funny way of forcing confrontations. And mine came at my cousin's wedding in late 2021. It was the first family event I'd attended in probably 3 years. I almost didn't go, but I'd always been close with this cousin and didn't want to miss her big day. I figured I could fly under the radar, congratulate her, and leave early. That plan lasted about 20 minutes. I was at the bar getting a drink when I heard my mom's voice behind me. "Oh, that's my younger daughter, Ava. She's had some struggles. Dropped out of college, Been working at some computer repair shop for years now. We keep hoping she'll get her life together like her brother Jake." I turned around and saw she was talking to some family friends I didn't recognize. The look of pity on their faces made my blood boil. "Actually, Mom," I said, stepping into the conversation, "I haven't worked at a repair shop in over 4 years." She looked startled to see me. "Oh, Ava, I didn't see you there. Well, what are you doing now?" "I run a digital marketing company. We did about $4.5 million in revenue last year." The silence was deafening. My mom's friends looked confused, like they couldn't reconcile this information with what they'd just been told. "Don't exaggerate, Ava," my mom said with that familiar, dismissive tone. "It's nice that you have a little business." "It's not a little business, Mom. I have 12 employees, an office downtown, and we're expanding into 3 new markets this year." That's when Jake appeared, drink in hand, with that same condescending smile I remembered from childhood. "Ava, good to see you, little sister. Mom was just telling everyone about your computer fixing job. That's nice that you're keeping busy." I looked at him, really looked at him. He looked tired, stressed. His suit was nice, but I could tell it wasn't new. He'd gained weight and had bags under his eyes. "I don't fix computers anymore, Jake. Haven't for years. I run a successful business." He laughed. "Come on, Ava, you don't need to embellish. We're family." That's when something snapped in me. 4 years of building something from nothing, of proving myself, of success that my family refused to acknowledge because it didn't fit their narrative. "You want specifics, Jake? Last month, my company had $400,000 in revenue. This year, I'm projecting to clear about $800,000 in personal income after taxes. I own my house outright, no mortgage. My business has 0 debt and 6 months of operating expenses in the bank. How are your student loans going?" Jake's face went white. The people around us had gone quiet. "I heard you're still paying off med school. What's that monthly payment again? $3,000? 4? Must be tough with the hospital budget cuts." "You don't know what you're talking about," Jake said, but his voice lacked confidence. "Don't I? Sarah told my cousin that you guys had to refinance the house to consolidate some credit card debt. Something about lifestyle expenses getting out of control." Now my parents were both staring at me like I'd grown a second head. The idea that their dropout daughter might be more financially successful than their doctor's son was breaking their brains. "This is inappropriate," my mother said. "Jake is a doctor. He saves lives. He's successful." "He's broke, Mom. Being a doctor doesn't automatically make you wealthy, especially when you're financing a lifestyle you can't afford." The rest of the wedding was awkward as hell. Word spread quickly through the family that the dropout daughter was apparently running some kind of successful business, while the successful doctor's son was struggling with debt. I left early, but not before overhearing several conversations where relatives were trying to piece together how they'd gotten the family narrative so wrong. The next morning, I woke up to 6 missed calls from my mother and a series of increasingly frantic voicemails. Ava, we need to talk about what you said last night. Call me back. Ava, people are asking questions about your business. You can't just make claims like that without proof. Ava, your father and I are very upset about how you spoke to Jake. Call us immediately. I didn't call back. Instead, I went to work like any other Monday. But around noon, my business manager came into my office looking confused. Ava, there are people here who say they're your parents. They don't have an appointment, but they're insisting they need to speak with you. I could see them through the glass walls of my office. My parents standing in our lobby, looking around at our employees, our equipment, our obvious success, like they couldn't believe their eyes. I told my manager to send them in. Ava, my mother said as soon as she sat down, we had no idea you were doing so well. You never asked. We thought you were still fixing computers, my father added. You never told us about any of this. When exactly would I have told you, Dad? During one of our frequent conversations where you ask about my life. Oh, wait, those don't happen. My mother looked around the office. This is really yours. All of this? Yes, Mom, I built this from nothing. No family money, no connections, no college degree, just hard work and figuring things out as I went. That's when the real conversation started. My father cleared his throat. Ava, we owe you an apology. We clearly didn't understand what you were building here. No, you didn't, because you never cared to find out. You were so busy being embarrassed by my existence that you never once asked what I was actually doing with my life. My mother started crying. We were just worried about you. When you dropped out of college, we thought you were throwing your life away. So your solution was to tell everyone in the family that I was a failure? To make sure I knew at every family gathering that I was the disappointment? We never said you were a failure, my father protested. Dad, last night you told the Johnsons that you had one successful child and one who never found her way. I was standing right there. The silence stretched out. They couldn't deny it because it was true. What do you want from us, Ava? My mother finally asked. I want you to acknowledge that you were wrong. I want you to admit that you spent years tearing me down because I didn't follow Jake's path. And I want you to understand that your approval isn't necessary for my success. We understand, my father said, and we're proud of what you've accomplished. Are you? Or are you just embarrassed that you've been telling people for 4 years that I'm a loser when I'm actually more successful than your golden boy? That hit home. My mother winced. Jake is still successful, she said defensively. He's a doctor. He helps people. Jake is $400,000 in debt and living paycheck to paycheck despite making $150,000 a year. That's not success, Mom. That's financial disaster with good PR. Over the next few months, the truth about Jake's situation became impossible to hide. The family finally started paying attention to what was actually happening in his life instead of just celebrating his job title. It turned out Jake and Sarah were in serious financial trouble. Between student loans, the overpriced house, credit card debt, and their expensive lifestyle, they were barely keeping their heads above water. The pandemic had hit Jake's income, but it had also hit Sarah's. She was in private practice and lost a lot of patients during lockdowns. Their combined income dropped by almost $80,000 in 2020, but their expenses stayed the same. They'd been robbing Peter to pay Paul for months, using credit cards to pay the mortgage, taking cash advances to make student loan payments, refinancing everything they could. Then Sarah got pregnant, which should have been good news, but instead sent them into full panic mode. They couldn't afford the medical bills. Maternity leave would cut her income further, and they had no savings for baby expenses. I heard all this through my cousin, who heard it from Jake's mother-in-law, who was apparently helping them avoid foreclosure by lending them money. In March 2022, I got a call from Jake. We hadn't spoken directly since the wedding disaster. Ava, we need to talk. His voice sounded different, tired, defeated, none of the arrogance I was used to. What's up, Jake? Look, I'm not good at this, but I need help, financial help. I let that hang in the air for a moment. What kind of help? Sarah and I are in trouble, real trouble. We might lose the house. I know you're doing well with your business, and I was hoping maybe you could loan us some money to get us back on our feet. The irony was overwhelming. The golden boy, the successful doctor, the one who was supposedly so much better than me, was calling to ask for money from the college dropout. How much money, Jake? 50,000 would save the house, maybe 75 to get us really stable again. I was quiet for a long time, thinking. Jake, do you remember what you said to me when I dropped out of college? Ava, that was years ago. I was young and stupid. You said some people just aren't cut out for academic achievement. You said not everyone can handle pressure. You said maybe I'd be happier doing something simpler. I know, and I'm sorry about that. I was wrong. You were wrong, but it wasn't just that one conversation, was it? It was years of condescension. Years of making sure I knew you thought you were better than me. Years of standing by while Mom and Dad treated me like a family embarrassment. What do you want me to say, Ava? I was an arrogant ass. I'm sorry, but right now I need help. What you need, Jake, is to learn how to manage money. You make $150,000 a year. There's no reason you should be broke, except that you've been living like you make $300,000. That's easy for you to say. You don't have student loans. You're right. I don't. Because I didn't go to medical school. Because I took a different path. The path you all spent years mocking me for taking. About a week after Jake's call, my mother called and asked me to come to a family dinner. She said Jake and Sarah would be there, and they wanted to talk to me about something important. I almost said no, but curiosity got the better of me. When I arrived, the atmosphere was tense. Jake and Sarah looked like they hadn't slept in weeks. My parents kept exchanging worried glances. Ava, my mother started, Jake told us about his conversation with you. We want to talk about helping him through this difficult time. We think as a family we should all contribute what we can, my father added. We're putting in 10,000. We were hoping you might consider matching that, or perhaps contributing more, since your business is doing so well. I looked around the table at these people who had spent years making me feel worthless, who were now asking me to bail out their favorite child. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You want me to give Jake money because he's bad with finances? It's not that he's bad with finances, Sarah spoke up for the first time. Medical school is expensive. The system is designed to keep doctors in debt. Sarah, I know doctors who live comfortably and pay off their loans. The difference is they don't buy $80,000 cars and $600,000 houses when they're making $150,000. We needed to maintain a certain image, Jake said. Professional expectations. Whose expectations? Or did you just want to look successful without doing the work of actually being financially successful? That's when my mother jumped in. Ava, don't be cruel. Jake is your brother. Family helps family. Family helps family, I repeated. Where was that energy when I was struggling? When I was working 16-hour days to build my business? When I was eating ramen for dinner because I was reinvesting every penny into equipment and marketing? That's different, my father said. You chose that path. And Jake chose his path too. He chose to go to expensive schools, take out massive loans, and then live beyond his means. Those were all choices. Sarah started crying, which I think was supposed to make me feel guilty, but I'd learned to recognize emotional manipulation from dealing with difficult clients. Ava, please, Jake said. I know we haven't always gotten along, but I'm begging you. We're going to lose everything. What exactly are you going to lose, Jake? The house you couldn't afford? The car payments that are strangling your budget? Maybe losing those things is exactly what you need. We have a baby coming, Sarah sobbed. How can you be so heartless? I'm not heartless. I'm practical. You're bringing a child into a financially unstable situation because you refuse to live within your means. That's not my fault. My parents looked horrified that I wasn't immediately opening my checkbook. Ava, my mother said, we raised you better than this. You have the money to help your brother. Why won't you? Because, Mom, giving Jake money doesn't solve his problem. It just enables him to continue making bad choices. He needs to learn to budget, to live below his means, to make responsible financial decisions. A bailout prevents him from learning those lessons. So you're going to let your brother lose his house out of principle? My father asked. I'm going to let my brother experience the natural consequences of his choices, the same way you all let me experience the consequences of mine when I was struggling. This is revenge, isn't it? Jake said. You're punishing me because you're jealous of my education and my career. I laughed. Actually laughed. Jealous. Jake, I make more money than you do. I have zero debt while you're drowning in it. I own my house. You're about to lose yours. I have 6 months of business expenses saved up. You can't make it through 1 month without a paycheck. What exactly would I be jealous of? My education, my degree, the respect that comes with being a doctor. Respect, Jake. Respect is earned. And you lost mine years ago when you decided I was beneath you because I didn't follow your path. I stood up to leave, but then turned back to the table. You know what? "I'll make you an offer, Jake. Not a loan, not a gift, but a job." They all looked surprised. "Come work for me. I'll pay you $60,000 a year to start, which is probably more than you can afford to pay yourself right now. You can learn business operations, maybe eventually work up to managing some of our accounts, but you'd have to actually work, take direction, and acknowledge that despite your fancy degree, you have things to learn." Jake's face went red. "Work for you? I'm a doctor. You're a doctor who can't pay his bills. I'm offering you a chance to earn steady money while you figure out your finances. I'm not going to work for my little sister. Then you're going to lose your house." I headed toward the door, then stopped one more time. For the record, this isn't about revenge. This is about finally setting appropriate boundaries with people who treated me like garbage for years and now want something from me. If Jake wants help, he can earn it, just like I had to earn everything I have. After I left, apparently all hell broke loose. My cousin called me later that night to fill me in on what happened after I left. Jake had a complete meltdown. He started screaming about how unfair it was that the college dropout was now in a position to look down on him. He said it was backwards and wrong, that I had more money than him, despite his education and hard work. Sarah joined in, crying about how they were going to be humiliated if they lost their house, and how it wasn't fair that I could help them, but was choosing not to. My parents apparently tried to calm them down and suggested maybe they should consider my job offer, which made Jake even angrier. "I didn't spend 8 years in school to work for Ava," he reportedly said. "I'm a doctor. I save lives. She makes websites." My mother tried to point out that my website business was apparently quite successful, which led to Jake accusing her of taking my side and storming out with Sarah. Over the next few months, Jake and Sarah's situation continued to deteriorate. They couldn't make their mortgage payments and went into foreclosure. They had to sell the BMW and downsize to a used Honda. They moved into a rental apartment that cost half what their mortgage payment had been. Jake's pride took a massive hit. He'd spent years being the family's success story, and now he was the cautionary tale about lifestyle inflation and poor financial planning. My parents finally started to understand that having a prestigious job doesn't automatically equal financial success. They also started to realize that they'd been wrong about me for years. The family dynamic completely shifted. At gatherings, people started asking me about business and entrepreneurship instead of tiptoeing around my failure to launch. Jake, meanwhile, became the one people worried about and whispered about. In June 2022, I got a letter in the mail from Jake, an actual handwritten letter. "Ava," it said, "I've had a lot of time to think about everything that's happened, and I need to apologize. Not just for asking you for money, but for years of treating you like you were less than me. You were right about everything. I was living beyond my means, making terrible financial decisions, and coasting on the prestige of my job title without actually being successful. Meanwhile, you built something real from nothing, and I was too arrogant to see it. I'm working on getting my finances in order. Sarah and I are in counseling, both marriage and financial. We're learning to live within our means and make better choices. I don't expect your forgiveness, and I'm not asking for money. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand how wrong I was and how much I underestimated you. Your brother, Jake." It was a good letter. It felt genuine, but it was also about 5 years too late. These days, my business is doing better than ever. We're up to 15 employees and projected to hit $6 million in revenue this year. I'm considering opening a second location in a nearby city. Jake and Sarah are slowly getting their act together. They're living in that small apartment. Jake took on some part-time telehealth work to bring in extra money, and they're actually making progress on their debt. The baby is healthy and beautiful, and they seem to be learning how to be responsible adults. My parents have completely changed their tune about me. Now I'm the successful entrepreneur daughter, and Jake is the one they worry about. The narrative has completely flipped, which is honestly kind of funny. Jake and I don't have much of a relationship, but it's not actively hostile anymore. We're polite at family gatherings, and he stopped being condescending. Progress, I guess. Update 1. It's been a few months since my original post, and the holidays brought some new drama that I thought you'd find interesting. Thanksgiving was at my parents' house, and for the first time in years, I actually wanted to go. Not because I was eager to see everyone, but because I was curious how the family dynamic would play out now that everyone knew the real story about Jake's and my respective situations. The dinner conversation was surreal. Instead of the usual Jake worship fest, people kept asking me about my business. My uncle wanted to know about digital marketing for his accounting firm. My cousin asked about website costs for her boutique. Jake sat quietly through most of it, occasionally answering questions about work, but clearly uncomfortable with not being the center of attention. Sarah looked exhausted. Having a baby while dealing with financial stress is no joke. The weirdest moment came when my grandmother asked about my house. I mentioned I was thinking about adding a home office addition, and she said, "It's so nice that you can afford to improve your property." My mother immediately jumped in with, "Well, Jake and Sarah are doing well too. They found a nice apartment." The awkward silence that followed was deafening. Later, as I was helping with dishes, my dad pulled me aside. "Ava, I want you to know how proud we are of what you've built. We were wrong to doubt you." "Thanks, Dad. Have you thought any more about Jake's situation? Maybe there's something you could do to help." And there it was. Even after everything, they still wanted me to bail out their golden boy. "Dad, Jake needs to solve his own problems. That's how people learn and grow. But he's family. So am I. And when I was struggling, the family advice was to figure it out myself. I did. Now it's Jake's turn." Update 2. I heard through the family grapevine that Jake finally took a second job. He's doing telehealth consultations in the evenings and weekends, which is adding about $30,000 to his annual income. More importantly, he and Sarah seem to have finally gotten serious about budgeting. They sold Sarah's jewelry, Jake sold his golf clubs, and they've cut their expenses down to bare necessities. My cousin told me Jake actually asked her for advice about budgeting apps and debt consolidation strategies. The guy who used to lecture me about not having ambition is now learning basic personal finance at age 35. Part of me feels vindicated, but mostly I just feel sad that it took almost losing everything for him to develop some humility and basic life skills. Update 3. In February, I got an unexpected call from Sarah. Jake didn't know she was calling, but she wanted to talk to me about something. We met for coffee, and she looked completely different from the entitled doctor's wife I remembered. More tired, but also more real somehow. "Ava, I need to ask you something, and I hope you'll hear me out." "Okay. I know you offered Jake a job last year and he was too proud to take it, but I was wondering, would you consider hiring me?" I was surprised. "What kind of work are you thinking about?" "I don't know. Anything. I have organizational skills. I can learn new software. I'm willing to start at the bottom. We need the income, and I'm tired of pretending we don't." It was the first honest conversation I'd had with anyone from Jake's side of the family in years. "What does Jake think about this?" "He doesn't know I'm here. He'd probably be embarrassed, but I'm past caring about embarrassment. We have a baby, we have debt, and we need steady income." I ended up hiring Sarah part-time to help with administrative work. She's actually really good at it. Detail-oriented, professional, and grateful for the opportunity in a way that Jake never would have been. Jake was indeed embarrassed when he found out, but he couldn't argue with the extra $1,500 a month it brought in. Working with Sarah has been unexpectedly healing for me. She treats me with respect, acknowledges my success, and doesn't try to downplay what I've built. For the first time, I feel like someone from Jake's camp actually sees me clearly. Update 4. This past summer, we had another family gathering, this time for my grandmother's birthday. It was the first time in ages that everyone was in the same room again. The dynamic had shifted even further. People crowded around me, asking for business advice, while Jake sat off to the side, looking like a shadow of the golden boy he used to be. At one point, my grandmother actually said, "I'm so proud of you, Ava. You really made something of yourself." I swear Jake flinched, because those were words he'd been hearing his whole life, and for once, they were directed at me. Later, Jake pulled me aside. "I know I haven't said this enough, but congratulations. On everything. You really did it." It wasn't much, but coming from him, it was monumental. Update 5. It's now the end of the year, and things have continued to evolve. My company passed $6 million in revenue, and we're preparing to open that second office I mentioned. I'm in a position now where I'm being invited to speak at conferences about entrepreneurship. Me, the college dropout who was once the family embarrassment. Jake and Sarah are still climbing out of their financial hole, but they're making steady progress. They sold the last of their luxury items, moved to a smaller apartment, and are finally living within their means. Jake even swallowed his pride enough to ask me for advice about budgeting and debt repayment strategies. I gave him some pointers, but made it clear that I'm not his safety net. He has to do the work himself. My parents have, for the most part, stopped pushing me to bail him out. I think they finally understand that rescuing him won't fix his problems. What has surprised me most, though, is how much closer I've grown to Sarah. She's been working with me for nearly a year now, and she's become one of my most reliable employees. She's professional, trustworthy, and genuinely grateful. I sometimes wonder if she resents Jake for his pride, but she never says anything. She just works hard and supports her family the best she can. As for Jake, he's no longer arrogant toward me. If anything, he's humbled. Our relationship is still fragile, but there's less venom in it now. We're not close, but at least we can be civil. And honestly, that's more than I ever expected. Looking back, I think the biggest lesson here is that success isn't about titles, degrees, or other people's approval. It's about resilience, adaptability, and the willingness to keep pushing forward even when no one believes in you. I used to crave my parents' validation. I used to think if I could just achieve something big enough, they'd finally see me as worthy. But now I realize I don't need their approval. My success speaks for itself. And the irony is, the very people who once dismissed me as a failure are now the ones coming to me for help, advice, and guidance. Life has a strange sense of humor. Would I ever loan Jake money if he asked again? Probably not. But would I give him a chance to earn it, to rebuild his pride through actual work and responsibility? Maybe. Because at the end of the day, we're siblings. And while I'll never forget how he and my parents treated me, I also won't let bitterness define the rest of my life. For now, I'm focusing on continuing to grow my business, supporting my team, and enjoying the life I've built for myself. The family narrative has flipped, and for once, I'm the one holding the pen. Update 6. The new year brought one last twist I didn't see coming. My mom called me one evening in January. She sounded nervous, almost timid, something I'd never heard from her before. Ava, your father and I have been talking. We realize now how unfair we were to you for so many years. We were wrong to treat Jake as the golden child and to dismiss everything you were doing. We're sorry. I didn't know what to say. My parents had never apologized for anything before, not once in my entire life. Mom, I said slowly, I appreciate you saying that. But you can't erase the damage with just an apology. It took me years to undo the self-doubt you planted in me. I know, she admitted, her voice breaking. We thought we were motivating you, but we were just cruel. We see that now. We want to do better. For the first time, I heard genuine remorse. And while forgiveness isn't instant, that call meant more to me than they'll probably ever realize. Update 7. In March, Jake surprised me too. He asked if we could grab lunch, just the two of us. We met at a quiet cafe and he seemed different, less prideful, more human. I need to thank you, he said. Not for money, not for bailing me out, but for telling me the truth when no one else would. I hated you for it at the time, but you were right. Losing the house, downsizing, all of it, it forced me to face reality. I nodded. That's how growth works. Pain teaches what comfort hides. I've been picking up extra shifts. Sarah's job with you has been a blessing. We're budgeting, paying off debt, and for the first time, I feel like we might actually get ahead. It's humbling, but I'm grateful. It was the closest thing to brotherly respect I'd ever gotten from him. Update 8. By summer, my second office was officially open. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was surreal. Employees, clients, even city officials showed up. My parents came too. They stood in the front row, watching me give a speech about entrepreneurship, resilience, and the power of carving your own path. Afterward, my dad shook my hand and said, "You've built something incredible, Ava. I don't just mean the business, I mean the life. You proved us wrong, and I'm glad you did." That was his version of an apology. Not perfect, but good enough. Update 9. Thanksgiving rolled around again, and the family dynamic had completely transformed. My aunt, who used to gush over Jake, now asked me to review her catering company's website. My uncle wanted advice about social media marketing for his construction business. Jake sat there quietly, no longer the star attraction. At one point, my grandmother leaned over to him and said, "Jake, you should be proud of your sister. She's accomplished so much." He smiled faintly and said, "I know, I really am." That single moment made all the years of struggle worth it. Update 10. Just last month, Sarah pulled me aside after work. "I want you to know," she said, "that you gave me more than a job. You gave me hope. When everything was falling apart, you gave me a chance to stand on my own 2 feet. I'll never forget that." Her words nearly brought me to tears, because for so long, I was the one begging for chances, begging for someone to see my worth. And now, I was the one giving that to others. Final update for now. As I write this, our company has grown to nearly 20 employees, and we're on track for $8 million in revenue this year. I've been invited to mentor young entrepreneurs and to speak at national conferences. I even started a scholarship fund for students pursuing tech careers who don't fit the traditional academic mold. Kids like me, who need someone to believe in them. Jake and Sarah are still renting their modest apartment, but they're stable. They've paid down nearly half their debt. Their baby is thriving. And while Jake will probably never fully admit it, I think he respects me now in a way he never thought he would. My parents? They've stopped comparing us. They've started bragging about me, the way they used to brag about Jake. It feels strange, almost surreal. But the difference is, I no longer need it. I don't crave their validation anymore. Because here's the truth, success is living life on your own terms. Success is knowing your worth even when others don't see it. Success is building something real, not for applause, but because it matters to you. For years, I was the family disappointment, the dropout, the failure, the afterthought. Now I'm Ava, the entrepreneur, the provider, the one who refused to stay down. And the best part? I did it without becoming bitter. I did it without becoming them. I don't know what the future holds, but whatever it is, I know this. I've already won.